Putin considers meeting with Trump.
On the whole, this meeting is quite possible, and we will be happy to prepare for it.
Russia continues to strike peaceful Ukrainian people. Among the victims are children. I'm Albina Підгірняк, who will analyze the news of Ukraine and the world together. Putin respects Trump again. Trump said this during a press conference at the White House, noting that this is precisely what Putin's latest statements indicate.
Iran crisis.
Well, he made some nice statements today. Did you see the statement?
I saw the statement.
Very nice. Vladimir Putin made some very nice statements today. Look, he respects our country again. He didn't respect it a year ago, I can tell you right now. But Putin respects our country. And President Xi of China respects our country. And Kim Jong-un they respect our country again. We were not a country that was respected just a year ago. We had a president that was incompetent. We had bad people circulating around this desk, this beautiful, resolute desk. They had, I guess, evil intentions. You couldn't be that stupid. I mean, they had evil intentions. But the world respects our country again. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Press. Thank you, Press. Just outright the story. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
I'll remind you that the day before, Putin said that he would like to meet with Trump and that such negotiations are supposedly ongoing. Here, of course, I would like to understand where Trump saw Putin's respect. When approaching the press the day before, Putin said that he would like to meet with Trump, and that's it. Then Putin said that all Western countries are hostile to Russia, that the threat from Russia is supposedly greatly exaggerated. Now, NATO will spend 5% of its GDP on defense. In this regard, Putin said that Russia supposedly spends on its defense needs and NATO will spend on Trump. Firstly, it is unclear where the respect is. And secondly, Putin directly criticizes Trump's idea and says that Russia spends everything on defense. In fact, millions of dollars are spent in Russia on the war in Ukraine. This is the money that Russians could really spend on improving life in their country.
Before the speech, what are we spending these trillions on? To support our military-industrial complex on ourselves, on friends and relatives. And what will they spend their 5% on? To buy in the USA? In general, this meeting is quite possible, and we will be happy to prepare for it. Everything is fine if it is against Russia. Well, we didn't see it, or what? And they see and understand everything there perfectly. But they talk about something else. They talk about our aggressiveness. Look at yourself. So we have a good order, yes. This means that they notice the dance in someone else's eye, but they don't want to see the deck in their own. And what is happening, on the basis of this rhetoric about, as it were, Russia's aggression, they are beginning to talk about the need to equip. Well, let them equip themselves. Let's look at the structure of these squads, at the structure of these weapons.
Russia attacked Odessa. There are dead and injured. The enemy hit a 21-story apartment building in Odessa. The impact caused a fire on 7th, 8th and 9th floor. People were trapped in their apartments. 5 people were rescued, including a small child. It is previously known about 2 dead, at least 17 injured. Psychologists are working on the scene, and the invincibility point from the State Emergency Service has been deployed. The situation with rescuing people was complicated by repeated air raids.
Раз, два, три.
Now I'll show you footage of how an 11-year-old girl was rescued after the Russian attack in Kharkiv.
You need to be a little patient, but there is no need to be afraid here, because I am with you, the rescuers and the police are with you, they will take care of you, they will not do you badly. Well? Do you understand what I'm talking about? If you understand, change my finger again.
Meanwhile, Putin continues to talk about negotiations. He doesn't stop firing. The Russians are hitting our civilian cities, ordinary people, small children. Putin is carrying out the usual terror of the civilian population of Ukraine. At the same time, following the results of the summit in Minsk, he gathered journalists and told them that he thinks about the next round of negotiations, what it should be like.
We will hold a third round of talks. In general, we are ready for this. You need to agree on the place and time. I hope that the President of the Republic of Turkey, Mr. Erdogan, will remain in his position to support this process. We are very grateful to him for this. We are ready to hold such a meeting in Istanbul, but when specifically, these are the leaders of the negotiating group from both sides. And they, by the way, are in constant contact with each other. They call each other, and, in my opinion, this is not bad. Now they are agreeing among themselves about the time of the next meeting. Well, what will be the subject? The topic, in my opinion, should be the discussion of memoranda on both sides.
Justifying himself, Putin says that he started the war because Western countries deceived him, didn't keep their promises that NATO wouldn't expand its borders to the east. And that is precisely why Russia had to act in the anticipation. Let me remind you that Russia itself once sought to become a member of NATO and even conducted joint exercises with the alliance.
And how did it all start? From the fact that we were grossly fooled, as people say, cheated, simply fooled, about the non-expansion of NATO to Skid. Aja is well aware of this. The whole world knows that Russia promised that NATO would not blow up a single centimeter on Skid. And then one wave of expansion after Insha. We have been talking for an hour about the fact that the security of one country or a group of countries cannot be ensured at the expense of the security of another. And this is spelled out in international documents that were agreed upon by everyone. What happened in practice? One expansion after another. And we were told for the whole hour, well, there is no need to be afraid of this, nothing will obstruct you. And when did we answer that we thought that it would bother us? What was the answer to us? They did nothing, they just sent us away with our opinion. And absolutely no one paid him and did not want to settle with him. But we know better what obstructs us and what does not. It is we who have the right to determine the level of our safety and the level of threats that can approach us from one side or another.
President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, once again called for increased pressure on Russia. He wrote about this in his telegram. We are talking about sanctions pressure on the aggressor country. This is the only way to talk about ending this war.
We are mobilizing sanctions pressure on Russia to the maximum for the sake of ending the war and real peace. We must implement the sanctions packages of partners in our jurisdiction, as well as implement Ukrainian sanctions decisions in key world jurisdictions. The synchronization of sanctions should be ensured. Today's decision of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine sets a clear task for all state institutions of Ukraine and instructs to activate our entire diplomatic direction. Russia must feel the truly painful consequences of blocking all diplomatic efforts and peace proposals and prolonging the war. EU sanctions, sanctions of other members of the Group of Seven, sanctions of other countries with which Russia has strong ties, all of this must work 100%.
At the moment, it seems realistic that the European Union will be able to agree on the approval of the 18th package of sanctions against Russia by the beginning of July. This was stated by the Presidential Commissioner for Sanctions Policy, Vladislav Lasyuk. The Commissioner expressed the opinion that the most obvious thing that could be in this sanctions package is the tankers of the Shadow Fleet. There will be approximately 77 such tankers. Sanctions will be imposed against a number of banks and companies involved in supplying the Russian military-industrial complex. Regarding the proposal to lower the price ceiling for Russian oil from $60 to $45 per barrel, the official noted that it hasn't yet been rejected.
Currently, in general, it seems that the 18th sanctions package will be adopted by the beginning of July. For now, we are leaving such a reality. Today, we have not yet agreed on the 18th sanctions package, but the prospect of reaching an agreement tomorrow looks absolutely realistic. I think that there will be not only tankers there, but also entities related to the functioning of the Russian shadow fleet. We really hope to see captains there as well. This would be a very good and powerful signal that the responsibility for participating in the Russian shadow fleet is becoming as individual as possible and physically toxic for everyone.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban claims that the result of the so-called referendum on Ukraine's EU membership held at the initiative of this government made it possible to stop Ukraine's accession. Orban said that Hungary understands the Ukrainians and sees their heroic struggle.
We also see that they need help, but we want to help in a way that does not destroy ourselves. Membership of Ukraine in the EU would mean that we will destroy ourselves. We would immediately get involved in a war with Russia and bring it to the territory of the EU and therefore to the territory of Hungary. Yesterday, thanks to more than 2 million votes on Vox 2025, we stopped the accession of Ukraine to the European Union. We don't even know what Ukraine is today, where its borders are. This danger also existed in relation to other countries of the former Soviet bloc. That is why they were first accepted into NATO, because NATO could guarantee these borders, and only after that, the EU accepted other relevant countries.
NATO fears a collision with Russia. They're already talking about it directly. If Russia attacks the countries of the alliance, it will be a completely different war than the one currently in Ukraine. This was stated by the director of NATO's nuclear policy, Jim Stokes. He noted that many people believe that the threat from Russia to NATO is only on the eastern flank. However, in reality, this is not so, because the enemy can threaten from all sides.
Partly because Russia is a nuclear adversary and we are a nuclear alliance, this would be a completely different situation. Even according to the Russian nuclear doctrine, this is a different situation. And I think this is forcing many countries to rethink what the armed forces should look like, what our capabilities should be, how we can prepare for a future conflict. And when we prepare for a conflict, the additional benefit that we get from this, from what concerns my work, is deterrence. It is both at sea and in the air. They can cross all of Europe. They have ships and submarines that, if they are in the North Atlantic, can attack us from that direction. So what is important here is our air and missile defense capabilities. I think traditionally we have thought of missile defense in terms of being able to shoot down large missiles flying out of the sky, but an attack by a swarm of drones can be very different.
Stokes also commented on the brilliant operation of the Ukrainian intelligence service. He noted that he had no data on this operation. However, it really had an impact, given the fact that Russia and Ukraine are now trying to use any advantages in this war. This operation has become truly historic.
It was certainly interesting to watch the results. I don't have detailed data on the operation itself, but it really had an impact. I think that having watched this war for several years, both sides are trying to find ways to gain some advantage. They are trying to achieve their political goals using different types of military force. You know, if I were sitting in the Kremlin, I would definitely not be happy that several strategic bombers were destroyed or damaged. I think we should continue to watch how both sides are involved in the conflict. And from a NATO perspective, it is also important for us, in addition to the material support that the alliance members provide to Ukraine for its legitimate defense, to understand how Russia is waging this war against Ukraine. And if there ever comes a situation where we are drawn into a war with Russia, which we certainly won't start because we are a defensive alliance, how will that conflict play out between NATO and Russia?
As for events in the Middle East, Donald Trump criticized the statement of the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, that Iran won the war against Israel. Trump wrote about this on the social network Truth Social. Trump noted that he had abandoned the idea of easing sanctions against Iran. He said that Khamenei owes him his life and called the recent statements of the supreme leader of Iran arrogant and stupid. Trump said that he wouldn't hesitate to order the bombing of Iranian nuclear facilities again if Tehran resumes uranium enrichment.
Why would the so-called supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, of the war-torn country of Iran, say so blatantly and foolishly that he won the war with Israel, when he knows his statement is a lie? It is not so. As a man of great faith, he is not supposed to lie. His country was decimated. His 3 evil nuclear sites were obliterated. And I knew exactly where he was sheltered, and would not let Israel or the U.S. armed forces, by far the greatest and most powerful in the world, terminate his life. I saved him from a very ugly and ignominious death, and he does not have to say, "Thank you, President Trump." In fact, in the final act of the war, I demanded that Israel bring back a very large group of planes, which were heading directly to Tehran, looking for a big day, perhaps the final knockout. Tremendous damage would have ensued, and many Iranians would have been killed. It was going to be the biggest attack of the war, by far. During the last few days, I was working on the possible removal of sanctions and other things, which would have given a much better chance to Iran at a full, fast, and complete recovery. The sanctions are biting. But no, instead I get hit with a statement of anger, hatred, and disgust, and immediately dropped all work on sanction relief and more. Iran has to get back into the world order flow, or things will only get worse for them. They are always so angry, hostile, and unhappy. And look at what it has gotten them. A burned-out, blown-up country with no future, a decimated military, a horrible economy, and death all around them. They have no hope, and it will only get worse. I wish the leadership of Iran would realize that you often get more with honey than you do with vinegar. Peace.
Dear viewers, thank you for watching this video. Give it a like and leave a comment. I will be grateful for your activity and communication. Take care. See you soon.